In a small, quiet town in the southern United States where everyone knew each other's names and life moved at a slow pace, racial tensions simmered beneath the surface. The town was picturesque, with tree-lined streets, old brick buildings, and a sense of charm that attracted tourists. But behind this serene facade lay deep-rooted prejudices, especially within the local police department. Among the officers, one stood out for all the wrong reasons. Officer James Carter. Carter had been on the force for over 15 years. He was known for his short temper and rigid views, often clashing with colleagues who disagreed with his methods. To some residents, he was seen as a protector of law and order. To others, particularly people of color, he was a symbol of fear. His reputation for targeting minorities during traffic stops or questioning them without cause was well known, but rarely challenged. Many were too afraid to speak up, knowing how quickly things could escalate if they did. On this particular day, the sun shone brightly over the town, casting long shadows across the streets. Birds chirped cheerfully and the air smelled faintly of blooming flowers. It seemed like any ordinary afternoon until General Marcus Thompson arrived. A decorated U.S. Army officer, General Thompson had spent most of his adult life serving his country. He had led troops through dangerous missions overseas, earning medals for bravery and leadership. Now, after years away from home, he was finally visiting his hometown to reconnect with family and friends. Dressed casually in jeans, sneakers, and a plain t-shirt, General Thompson looked nothing like the stern figure many imagined when picturing a high-ranking military official. His broad shoulders and confident stride hinted at his strength, but his warm smile softened his appearance. As he drove into town, memories flooded back. The school he attended as a child, the park where he played baseball, and the diner where he used to grab burgers with buddies. Everything felt familiar yet different, tinged with nostalgia. Deciding to take a break from driving, General Thompson pulled into a gas station near the edge of town. It was a modest place with faded signs advertising fuel prices and snacks. He parked his car next to a pump, stepped out, and began filling the tank. The rhythmic clicking of the nozzle echoed softly as gasoline flowed into the tank. For a moment he closed his eyes, savoring the fresh breeze that carried the scent of pine trees from nearby woods. This was supposed to be a peaceful trip, a chance to relax after years of service, but fate had other plans. Unbeknownst to him, trouble was approaching fast. Officer James Carter, patrolling the area in his marked cruiser, spotted the general from afar. At first glance, there was nothing unusual about the scene, a man pumping gas at a station. But something about the sight made Carter pause. Perhaps it was the casual attire, which didn't match the stereotype he held of responsible citizens. Or maybe it was the color of the man's skin, which immediately triggered suspicion in Carter's mind. Whatever the reason, he decided to investigate further. Pulling into the lot, Carter parked his car haphazardly, leaving it angled awkwardly next to Thompson's vehicle. Without turning off the engine, he stepped out, adjusting his belt and resting his hand on the holster of his gun. His boots crunched against gravel as he approached the unsuspecting general. From the corner of his eye, Thompson noticed the officer heading his way but thought little of it. After all, why would anyone bother a man simply refueling his car? "Hey, you," Carter barked, his voice sharp and commanding. Startled, Thompson turned around, meeting the officer's glare with a puzzled expression. "What are you doing here?" Carter demanded, crossing his arms over his chest. "I'm just getting gas," Thompson replied calmly, holding up the nozzle as if to prove his point. "Is there a problem?" Carter ignored the question, narrowing his eyes suspiciously. "Do you live around here?" he asked, his tone dripping with accusation. "Yes, I do," Thompson answered, maintaining his composure despite the hostile vibes emanating from the officer. "I grew up in this town." "Well, I don't recognize you," Carter snapped, taking a step closer. "You need to show me some ID." At this request, Thompson raised an eyebrow. There was no legal requirement to carry identification unless operating a vehicle, and even then, officers needed probable cause before demanding it. Still, not wanting to provoke a confrontation, he reached into his pocket and retrieved his wallet. Flipping it open, he revealed both his driver's license and military ID, complete with his rank and photo. Instead of calming Carter down, the sight of the ID card only fueled his anger. Military? Really? He scoffed, snatching the wallet from Thompson's hand. How convenient. Everyone knows uniforms mean jack these days. Thompson frowned, his patience wearing thin. Sir, I've done nothing wrong. Why are you harassing me? But Carter wasn't listening. His face twisted into a sneer as he jabbed a finger toward Thompson's chest. Don't try to play smart with me. You think your fancy title makes you special? Around here we follow rules, soldier boy. The words stung, not because they came from authority, but because they carried undertones of prejudice. Thompson clenched his jaw, reminding himself to stay calm. Losing his temper wouldn't solve anything. I understand your job is important, officer, he said evenly, but I haven't broken any laws. Can I please go now? No, you can't. Carter shouted, his voice rising. You're under arrest for suspicious activity. The declaration caught Thompson off guard. Suspicious activity? What exactly am I suspected of doing? Carter didn't answer. Instead, he grabbed Thompson's arm roughly, twisting it behind his back. Pain shot through the general's shoulder, forcing him to wince. This is ridiculous, he muttered under his breath, though loud enough for Carter to hear. Shut up, Carter growled, slapping handcuffs onto Thompson's wrists. Onlookers gathered, watching in stunned silence as the respected war hero was shoved into the back seat of the patrol car. Some whispered among themselves while others recorded the incident on their phones. Word spread quickly, igniting outrage across the town. For General Thompson, the humiliation burned deeply. Here he was, a man who had dedicated his life to protecting his nation, being treated like a criminal based solely on the color of his skin. Yet even as doubt and frustration swirled inside him, he resolved to remain dignified. Little did he know, karma was already setting its wheels in motion, and justice would soon find its way to him. As Officer James Carter slammed the door of his patrol car shut, locking General Marcus Thompson inside, he felt a twisted sense of satisfaction. In his mind, he had done what was necessary to assert authority and maintain order. But the scene unfolding outside told a very different story. Onlookers stared in disbelief as the decorated war hero sat handcuffed in the back seat, his face calm but tinged with frustration. Some whispered angrily among themselves, while others pulled out their phones to record the incident. The tension in the air was palpable. Among the growing crowd was Colonel Lisa Harper, a close colleague of General Thompson who happened to be passing through the area. She was part of a convoy escorting a high-ranking military official to a nearby base when she spotted the commotion at the gas station. At first glance, it seemed like an ordinary police stop, but something about it felt off. Then she saw him, sitting in the back of the cruiser, unmistakably identifiable despite the casual clothes, was none other than General Marcus Thompson. Colonel Harper's heart sank. Without hesitation, she instructed her driver to pull over. Stepping out of her vehicle, she strode toward Carter with purpose, her uniform crisp and her demeanor commanding. Her presence immediately drew attention, not just from bystanders but also from Carter himself, who looked up with a mix of irritation and confusion. "What's going on here?" Colonel Harper demanded, her voice firm and authoritative. Carter hesitated for a moment before responding. "Ma'am, this is police business. I'm handling a situation involving suspicious activity." "Suspicious activity?" Harper repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That man happens to be General Marcus Thompson, one of the most respected officers in the U.S. Army. Are you telling me he's under arrest?" Carter's jaw tightened. He glanced nervously at the crowd gathering around them, many of whom were now openly filming the exchange. "Look, ma'am, I don't care who he says he is. He didn't comply with my orders, and that's enough for me to take action." Harper took a step closer, her eyes narrowing. "You didn't answer my question. What crime has he committed, and why are you treating him like a criminal?" Carter shifted uncomfortably, clearly unprepared for such direct confrontation. He was acting suspiciously," he stammered, avoiding eye contact. I have every right to investigate. The absurdity of the situation wasn't lost on anyone present. Here was a decorated general, a man who had risked his life countless times for his country, being accused of wrongdoing without evidence. Even some of Carter's own colleagues exchanged uneasy glances, sensing that this situation was spiraling out of control. Realizing that reason wouldn't work with Carter, Colonel Harper decided to escalate matters. Pulling out her phone, she made 2 critical calls. First, she contacted the nearest military base requesting immediate backup. Within minutes, several Humvees arrived on the scene, carrying armed soldiers who quickly surrounded the area. Their presence alone sent a powerful message. This wasn't just a local issue anymore. It was now a matter of national importance. Next, Harper reached out to federal authorities, ensuring that the incident would receive proper scrutiny. News of the arrest spread rapidly, reaching journalists and activists alike. Social media lit up with posts condemning Carter's actions, using hashtags like #Justice for Thompson and #End Racism in Blue. Videos of the altercation went viral, sparking outrage across the country. People shared stories of similar encounters, with law enforcement amplifying calls for accountability and reform. Back at the gas station, the atmosphere grew increasingly tense. Carter, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to defend himself. "Listen, this isn't what it looks like," he insisted, his voice trembling. "I was just doing my job." But no one was buying it. The soldiers stationed around the perimeter maintained stoic expressions, their weapons slung casually yet ominously across their shoulders. Bystanders shouted accusations at Carter, calling him names and demanding answers. Even members of his own department seemed reluctant to support him, aware that public opinion was firmly against him. General Thompson remained silent throughout the ordeal, choosing instead to observe the chaos unfolding around him. Despite the indignity of being arrested, he couldn't help but feel a flicker of hope. This moment wasn't just about him, it was about exposing systemic issues that had plagued communities for generations. If handled correctly, it could serve as a catalyst for meaningful change. Finally, after what felt like hours, Carter received instructions from his superiors to release Thompson immediately. Reluctantly, he unlocked the patrol car door and removed the handcuffs, muttering an insincere apology under his breath. As soon as he was free, Thompson straightened his posture, brushing dirt off his sleeves. He turned to face the crowd, which erupted into applause and cheers. Colonel Harper stepped forward, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "Are you okay, sir?" she asked softly. "I'm fine," Thompson replied, his voice steady. "Thank you for stepping in." With cameras rolling and reporters shouting questions, Thompson addressed the gathered audience. "This isn't about revenge or punishment," he began, his tone measured but resolute. "It's about shining a light on injustice and holding those in power accountable. We must work together to create a system where everyone is treated fairly, regardless of race or background." His words resonated deeply, earning nods of agreement from both civilians and military personnel. For many, this was more than just a victory for one man. It was a call to action. As the convoy prepared to leave, taking Thompson and Harper back to safety, the mood shifted. What had started as a routine day had transformed into a pivotal moment in the fight for equality. Meanwhile, Officer Carter retreated to the police station, his confidence shattered. The weight of his actions, and the backlash they provoked, pressed heavily on him. Back at headquarters, Internal Affairs launched an investigation into his conduct, uncovering a troubling pattern of misconduct. Complaints filed by previous victims painted a damning picture of bias and abuse of power. Fellow officers, once hesitant to speak out, finally came forward with their own accounts of Carter's discriminatory behavior. The media frenzy intensified, with news outlets dissecting every detail of the case. Interviews with witnesses highlighted the disparity between how white residents and minorities were treated by local law enforcement. Activists seized the opportunity to push for reforms, organizing protests and town hall meetings to demand transparency and accountability. The entire town became a focal point for discussions about racial profiling and police brutality. For Carter, karma hit hard. Suspended pending investigation, he found himself ostracized by colleagues and vilified by the public. Friends distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone embroiled in controversy. His family struggled to cope with the fallout, grappling with shame and fear of reprisals. Every knock at the door sent shivers down their spines, wondering if it was another angry neighbor or reporter seeking comment. Legal proceedings loomed on the horizon, promising further humiliation for Carter. Federal charges were considered, given the severity of the offense and its implications for civil rights violations. Lawyers advised him to plead guilty in hopes of mitigating damages, but pride, or perhaps denial, kept him clinging to innocence. In contrast, General Thompson returned to active duty, hailed as a symbol of resilience and courage. His ordeal inspired countless individuals to stand up against injustice, proving that even the most unexpected moments can spark monumental change. Together with Colonel Harper, he continued advocating for equality within law enforcement, pushing for initiatives aimed at bridging divides between communities and police forces. Though scars remained, progress was undeniable. The town where it all began transformed slowly but surely, adopting new policies and training programs focused on cultural sensitivity and de-escalation techniques. Community relations improved significantly, thanks in part to outreach efforts, spearheaded by veterans groups. While challenges persisted, the legacy of that fateful encounter endured. A reminder that bravery comes in many forms and that standing up for what is right often requires sacrifice but always yields meaningful results. The aftermath of General Marcus Thompson's arrest sent shockwaves through the small town and beyond. What had started as a routine stop at a gas station had spiraled into a national conversation about race, authority, and accountability. For Officer James Carter, the consequences were swift and severe. His actions not only exposed deep-seated prejudices within the local police department but also ignited a firestorm of public outrage that would haunt him for years to come. At the police station, internal affairs investigators worked tirelessly to piece together the events leading up to the incident. They reviewed body cam footage, interviewed witnesses, and sifted through years of records related to Carter's conduct. What they uncovered painted a disturbing picture. Complaints against Carter dated back nearly a decade. Accusations of racial profiling, excessive force, and verbal abuse. Yet none of these complaints had ever resulted in disciplinary action. Instead, they had been quietly dismissed or buried by higher-ups who either turned a blind eye or feared rocking the boat. As more evidence came to light, other officers began speaking out. Some admitted to witnessing Carter's discriminatory behavior firsthand, but said they had stayed silent out of fear of retaliation. Others confessed that they themselves had been pressured to conform to similar practices, perpetuating a toxic culture of bias within the department. One officer, a young recruit named Sarah Miller, tearfully recounted how she had once questioned Carter's methods during roll call only to be ridiculed and ostracized by her peers afterward. "It's like there's an unspoken rule," she told investigators. "You don't challenge the system unless you want your career destroyed." Meanwhile, outside the station, protests erupted nightly. Hundreds of residents gathered in the town square, holding candles and signs bearing messages like Black Lives Matter and Justice Over Bias. Activists from neighboring cities joined the demonstrations, amplifying calls for reform. Speeches echoed through the streets as speakers shared personal stories of discrimination and demanded systemic change. Among them was Reverend Charles Edwards, a local pastor whose fiery sermons had long championed civil rights. Standing before a sea of faces illuminated by flickering flames, he declared, "This is not just about one man. It's about all of us. We cannot stand idly by while hatred and prejudice poison our community." Media coverage intensified, with journalists dissecting every aspect of the case. National news outlets sent correspondents to the town, broadcasting live segments that brought the issue into living rooms across America. Social media platforms buzzed with hashtags, memes, and petitions urging federal intervention. Celebrities weighed in, using their platforms to amplify the voices of those fighting for justice. The sheer scale of attention forced local officials to act quickly or risk further tarnishing the town's reputation. For Carter, the pressure became unbearable. Suspended without pay and facing potential criminal charges, he retreated into isolation. Once proud and defiant, he now found himself consumed by paranoia. Every knock at the door made his heart race, every phone call filled him with dread. Friends distanced themselves, unwilling to associate with someone embroiled in scandal. Even family members struggled to reconcile the man they thought they knew with the person revealed in headlines. His wife, Linda, confided in a neighbor that she barely recognized her husband anymore. "He used to talk about protecting people," she said, tears streaming down her face. "But now I wonder, who is he really protecting?" Legal proceedings moved forward with alarming speed. Federal authorities intervened, launching their own investigation into whether Carter's actions constituted a violation of civil rights. Lawyers advised him to cooperate fully, warning that resisting could result in harsher penalties. Reluctantly, Carter agreed to sit for interviews, though his answers often contradicted earlier statements. When asked why he had targeted Thompson specifically, he claimed it was standard protocol to investigate unusual behavior. But when pressed for examples of such behavior, he faltered, unable to provide specifics. Public opinion overwhelmingly sided against Carter. Clips of the altercation circulated endlessly online, accompanied by commentary highlighting his aggressive tone and dismissive attitude. Memes mocking him went viral, turning his name into a punchline. In one particularly biting post, a user juxtaposed images of Carter arresting Thompson with photos of white suspects being treated politely by police. The caption read simply, "Same crime, different treatment." Despite the mounting evidence, Carter clung to denial. During court hearings, he maintained his innocence, insisting that he had acted within the bounds of his duties. His defense attorney argued that the situation had escalated due to misunderstandings rather than malice. But prosecutors countered, with damning testimony from victims of Carter's past misconduct, painting a clear pattern of discriminatory behavior. By the time closing arguments concluded, it was evident that justice would prevail. Back in the town, life slowly began to change. The scandal forced local leaders to confront uncomfortable truths about their community. Under immense public pressure, the mayor announced sweeping reforms aimed at rebuilding trust between law enforcement and residents. New training programs focused on cultural sensitivity and de-escalation techniques were implemented, with mandatory participation for all officers. Body cameras became standard equipment, ensuring transparency in future interactions. Additionally, an independent oversight board was established to review complaints against police, providing citizens with a mechanism to hold officers accountable. General Thompson emerged as a symbol of hope and resilience. Despite the trauma of his arrest, he chose to channel his experience into advocacy work. Speaking at conferences and panel discussions, he emphasized the importance of addressing systemic racism within institutions. "Change doesn't happen overnight," he told audiences. "But if we commit to listening, learning, and taking action, we can create a better future for everyone." His words resonated deeply, inspiring countless individuals to join the fight for equality. Colonel Lisa Harper also rose to prominence, becoming a beacon of leadership and integrity. Promoted to a higher rank in recognition of her role in rescuing Thompson, she dedicated herself to mentoring young soldiers, particularly women and minorities. Together with Thompson, she spearheaded initiatives aimed at fostering inclusivity within the military. Their partnership proved that unity could overcome division, proving once again that standing up for what is right often requires sacrifice, but always yields meaningful results. Years later, the town where it all began transformed significantly. While scars remained, progress was undeniable. Community relations improved dramatically, thanks in part to outreach efforts led by veterans groups. Annual diversity festivals celebrated the town's multicultural heritage, drawing visitors from far and wide. Young activists continued pushing for reforms, ensuring that lessons learned would not be forgotten. For Carter, karma delivered its final blow. Convicted on multiple counts including civil rights violations and abuse of power, he was sentenced to prison. Stripped of his badge and disgraced, he faded into obscurity, a cautionary tale of unchecked prejudice and arrogance. But his downfall served as a reminder that no one is above the law, and that accountability is essential for a just society. Though life moved on, the legacy of that fateful day endured. It reminded everyone that bravery comes in many forms, from the soldier defending freedom abroad to the citizen demanding justice at home. And sometimes fate steps in to deliver lessons we can't ignore, teaching us that true strength lies not in power but in integrity. The trial of Officer James Carter became a landmark case, drawing national attention and sparking debates about accountability within law enforcement. As the proceedings unfolded in a packed courtroom, emotions ran high. Prosecutors presented a mountain of evidence, body cam footage, witness testimonies, internal affairs reports, all pointing to a pattern of discriminatory behavior spanning years. For many observers, it was a long overdue reckoning for someone who had wielded authority with impunity. Carter's defense team fought hard to paint him as a misunderstood figure caught in the crossfire of public outrage. They argued that his actions during General Marcus Thompson's arrest were misinterpreted and driven by protocol rather than prejudice. But their efforts fell flat when victims of Carter's past misconduct took the stand. One after another, they recounted harrowing stories of being targeted, humiliated, and mistreated simply because of their race or socioeconomic status. A young woman named Lisa Nguyen described how Carter had pulled her over multiple times without cause, each encounter ending with thinly veiled threats. "He made me feel like I didn't belong in my own town," she said, her voice trembling. Like my life didn't matter. The most powerful testimony came from fellow officers who had finally found the courage to speak out. Among them was Sarah Miller, the rookie cop who had once been ridiculed for questioning Carter's methods. Her words carried weight not only because of her insider perspective, but also because of the risk she took in coming forward. "I stayed silent for too long because I was afraid," she admitted. "But seeing what happened to General Thompson made me realize that staying quiet is part of the problem." Her statement resonated deeply with the jury, underscoring the systemic nature of the issue. As the trial progressed, Carter's demeanor shifted noticeably. Once arrogant and defiant, he now appeared visibly shaken, often avoiding eye contact with those testifying against him. His attempts to justify his actions grew increasingly desperate, bordering on absurd. During cross-examination, he claimed that arresting Thompson was necessary to maintain order and prevent potential threats, a claim met with audible scoffs from spectators. Even his own lawyer seemed exasperated, frequently whispering urgent advice to tone down his rhetoric. Outside the courthouse, tensions simmered. Protesters gathered daily, holding signs demanding justice while chanting slogans like "No more excuses" and "Accountability now." Some supporters of Carter showed up as well, though their numbers dwindled as damning evidence mounted. Clashes between the two groups occasionally broke out, requiring police intervention to maintain peace. The media circus surrounding the trial added fuel to the fire, with pundits dissecting every twist and turn on live television. It was impossible to escape the story. It dominated headlines, social media feeds, and dinner table conversations across the country. Finally, after weeks of deliberation, the verdict arrived. The courtroom fell silent as the judge read the decision. Guilty on all counts, including civil rights violations, abuse of power, and obstruction of justice. Gasps rippled through the crowd, followed by cheers from those who had waited so long for this moment. Carter sat motionless, his face pale and expressionless. When the judge announced his sentence, 5 years in federal prison without parole, he buried his head in his hands, shoulders shaking silently. For Carter, the punishment extended far beyond incarceration. Stripped of his badge and pension, he became a pariah in the community he had once sworn to protect. Former colleagues refused to acknowledge him, and neighbors avoided crossing paths whenever possible. His family struggled to cope with the fallout. Linda filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences, while their children distanced themselves, ashamed of the man their father had become. Rumors swirled about his mental state, with some speculating that he might never recover from the shame and isolation. Meanwhile, General Thompson continued to use his platform to advocate for change. He traveled extensively, speaking at universities, military bases, and community centers about the importance of addressing systemic racism. His speeches were equal parts inspiring and challenging, urging audiences to confront uncomfortable truths and take meaningful action. "We can't rewrite history," he often said, "but we can shape the future. And that starts with holding ourselves and our institutions accountable." Colonel Lisa Harper played a crucial role in amplifying Thompson's message. Together, they launched a nationwide initiative called Bridging the Divide, aimed at fostering trust between law enforcement and marginalized communities. The program included workshops, mentorship opportunities, and policy recommendations designed to promote transparency and inclusivity. Their collaboration earned widespread praise, earning them invitations to prestigious events such as the White House Correspondents' Dinner and the United Nations General Assembly. Back in the small town where it all began, transformation continued at a steady pace. Under new leadership, the police department implemented sweeping reforms, including mandatory diversity training, stricter oversight mechanisms, and incentives for officers who demonstrated exceptional community engagement. Annual reviews showed significant improvements in public perception, with surveys indicating higher levels of trust and satisfaction among residents. Local schools introduced curriculum modules focused on racial equity and civic responsibility, ensuring that younger generations grew up equipped to challenge prejudice. The gas station where Thompson was arrested became a symbol of resilience and progress. Town officials erected a plaque commemorating the incident, inscribed with a quote from Thompson himself: "Justice begins when we choose to see each other as equals." Tourists occasionally stopped by to take photos, curious about the place, where a pivotal moment in history unfolded. Employees working there proudly shared stories of how the event had galvanized the community, turning anger into action. Years passed, and the scars of the past gradually faded, but not forgotten. Each anniversary of the arrest brought renewed reflection, with vigils and discussions reminding everyone of the work still needed to achieve true equality. Activists remained vigilant, pushing for continued reforms and holding leaders accountable. Young voices emerged, carrying the torch lit by pioneers like Thompson and Harper. Organizations dedicated to combating racism flourished, supported by grants, donations, and grassroots efforts. Even Carter's story served a purpose, albeit unintended. Documentaries and books chronicling his downfall highlighted the dangers of unchecked bias and the importance of accountability. Educators used his case as a cautionary tale in classrooms, encouraging students to think critically about power dynamics and ethical responsibility. Though he spent years behind bars, his legacy endured, not as a hero or villain, but as a stark reminder of the consequences of prejudice left unaddressed. In time, General Thompson retired from active duty, leaving behind a legacy of courage and compassion. He returned to his hometown, settling into a quiet life surrounded by loved ones. Yet he remained active in advocacy work, mentoring young leaders and participating in initiatives aimed at dismantling barriers. On sunny afternoons, he could often be seen walking through the park where he played baseball as a child, smiling warmly at passers-by. To many, he represented hope, a living testament to the belief that even in the darkest moments, light can prevail. Officer James Carter's fall from grace marked the beginning of a new chapter for the town and for America itself. It proved that no matter how entrenched systems of oppression may seem, they are not invincible. With determination, unity, and unwavering commitment to justice, change is possible. And sometimes fate steps in to deliver lessons we cannot ignore, teaching us that true strength lies not in dominance but in empathy, humility, and integrity. The years following the arrest of General Marcus Thompson and the subsequent downfall of Officer James Carter brought profound changes to the small town and to society as a whole. The ripple effects of that fateful day stretched far beyond Local borders, sparking movements, inspiring reforms, and reshaping how people thought about justice, accountability, and equality. For the residents of the town, it was a period of reflection, growth, and transformation. General Thompson, now retired from active military service, dedicated his golden years to building bridges between communities and institutions. Though he had every right to retreat into private life after the trauma of his arrest, he chose instead to remain in the public eye, using his experience as a catalyst for change. He became a sought-after speaker, traveling across the country to address audiences ranging from high school students to corporate executives. His talks were always grounded in humility and hope, emphasizing the importance of dialogue, understanding, and action. "We can't erase the past," he often said, "but we can learn from it. And learning is only the first step. What matters most is what we do next." One of Thompson's most impactful projects was the creation of the Unity Initiative, a nonprofit organization aimed at fostering collaboration between law enforcement agencies and marginalized communities. Through workshops, mentorship programs, and community outreach events, the initiative sought to break down barriers and build trust where none had existed before. Officers learned de-escalation techniques, cultural sensitivity training, and conflict resolution skills, while citizens gained insight into the challenges faced by police officers. The program quickly expanded to other towns and cities, earning praise from civil rights advocates and law enforcement leaders alike. Colonel Lisa Harper played an instrumental role in the success of the Unity Initiative. Her tireless efforts ensured that the program reached even the most underserved areas, including rural towns and inner-city neighborhoods. She also spearheaded a scholarship fund for minority youth interested in pursuing careers in law enforcement or the military. "Representation matters," she explained during an interview with a national news outlet. "When young people see themselves reflected in positions of authority, it inspires them to dream bigger and aim higher. That's how you create lasting change." Back in the small town, progress continued at a steady pace. The once divided community began to heal, thanks in large part to grassroots efforts led by activists, educators, and faith leaders. Annual diversity festivals celebrated the rich tapestry of cultures within the town, drawing visitors from neighboring regions. Local schools introduced new curriculum modules focused on racial equity, civic responsibility, and the history of civil rights movements. Teachers reported seeing noticeable shifts in student attitudes, with younger generations demonstrating greater empathy and awareness than their predecessors. Even the police department underwent significant transformation. Under new leadership, officers embraced transparency and accountability, adopting policies designed to rebuild trust with residents. Body cameras became mandatory, and footage was regularly reviewed by an independent oversight board composed of community members. Regular town hall meetings provided a platform for open communication, allowing citizens to voice concerns and offer suggestions directly to law enforcement officials. These initiatives not only improved relations but also reduced crime rates, as residents felt more comfortable reporting incidents and cooperating with investigations. For many, the gas station where Thompson was arrested remained a poignant reminder of the town's journey toward redemption. A plaque commemorating the event stood near the pumps, inscribed with words of wisdom. "Justice begins when we choose to see each other as equals." Tourists occasionally stopped by to take photos, curious about the place where history unfolded. Employees working there took pride in sharing stories of resilience and progress, turning the site into a symbol of hope rather than despair. Meanwhile, the story of Officer James Carter served as both a cautionary tale and a lesson in accountability. After serving 5 years in federal prison, Carter emerged a broken man, estranged from family and shunned by former colleagues. Unable to find employment in law enforcement or any field requiring trust, he struggled to rebuild his life. Some whispered that he deserved no sympathy, given the harm he had caused. Others, however, saw his plight as a reflection of systemic failures that allowed such behavior to persist unchecked for so long. Documentaries exploring his case highlighted these complexities, encouraging viewers to think critically about the broader implications of prejudice and power. In the years that followed, Carter's story inspired legislative changes at both state and federal levels. Lawmakers introduced bills aimed at strengthening oversight of police departments, mandating diversity training, and establishing stricter penalties for civil rights violations. Activists hailed these measures as victories, though they acknowledged that much work remained to be done. Passing laws is just the beginning, one advocate remarked during a press conference. The real challenge lies in ensuring they're enforced fairly and consistently. As time passed, the memory of Carter's actions faded, replaced by a collective focus on moving forward. Yet reminders of the past persisted, in plaques, documentaries, and conversations held around dinner tables. Each anniversary of Thompson's arrest brought renewed reflection, with vigils and discussions reminding everyone of the ongoing fight for equality. Young activists carried the torch lit by pioneers like Thompson and Harper, organizing protests, campaigns, and educational programs to keep the momentum alive. One such activist was Maya Johnson, a teenager who grew up hearing stories of the infamous arrest. Inspired by Thompson's courage and Harper's leadership, she founded a youth-led organization called Voices of Tomorrow. The group focused on empowering young people to speak out against injustice and advocate for policy changes. Within months, Voices of Tomorrow gained national recognition, partnering with established organizations to amplify its message. Maya herself became a prominent figure, delivering speeches at rallies and conferences alongside Thompson and Harper. "They showed us what it means to stand up for what's right," she said during one event. "Now it's our turn to carry the torch." Despite the progress made, challenges remained. Racial tensions still simmered beneath the surface in many parts of the country, bubbling over during moments of crisis. Police brutality cases continued to make headlines, reigniting calls for reform. Yet the groundwork laid by Thompson, Harper, and countless others provided a foundation upon which future generations could build. Their efforts demonstrated that meaningful change required patience, perseverance, and unity, a lesson that resonated deeply with those committed to creating a better world. For General Thompson, retirement offered a chance to slow down and enjoy the fruits of his labor. He spent his days gardening, reading, and spending time with loved ones, cherishing the simple pleasures of life. Yet he never lost sight of the bigger picture. On sunny afternoons, he could often be seen walking through the park where he played baseball as a boy, greeting neighbors with a warm smile and a kind word. To many, he represented hope, a living testament to the belief that even in the darkest moments, light can prevail. Officer James Carter's legacy, on the other hand, served as a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked bias and arrogance. While his fall from grace was undeniably tragic, it underscored the importance of holding individuals and institutions accountable for their actions. It proved that no one, not even those sworn to uphold the law, is above scrutiny, and it reminded everyone that true strength lies not in dominance but in empathy, humility, and integrity. As the sun set on another chapter in the town's history, the lessons of the past lingered, guiding the path forward. The scars of division may have healed, but the memories remained, a testament to the resilience of those who dared to demand better. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. Together, they had proven that change was possible. All it took was courage, determination, and an unwavering commitment to justice. Years turned into decades, and the small town where General Marcus Thompson's arrest had unfolded became a symbol of resilience and progress. What was once a place riddled with division and prejudice transformed into a beacon of hope, a testament to what could be achieved when communities came together to confront injustice and demand change. The legacy of that fateful day continued to inspire not only its residents, but also countless others across the nation who sought to build a more equitable society. General Thompson, now in his late 70s, lived a quiet yet fulfilling life. Though retired from public service, he remained an active voice in conversations about equality and justice. His garden, filled with vibrant flowers and towering trees, served as a sanctuary where he reflected on the journey he had witnessed and played a pivotal role in shaping. Neighbors often stopped by to share stories or seek advice, finding comfort in his wisdom and kindness. Despite the accolades and recognition he received over the years, Thompson always stayed grounded, reminding everyone that true heroism lay not in grand gestures, but in consistent acts of compassion and courage. One of the most profound changes sparked by Thompson's ordeal was the shift in how law enforcement operated, not just locally but nationwide. The reforms implemented in his hometown became a model for other cities grappling with similar issues. Departments across the country adopted policies promoting transparency, accountability, and community engagement. Body cameras, once met with resistance, became standard equipment, ensuring that interactions between officers and citizens were documented fairly. Independent oversight boards gained traction, giving civilians a platform to voice concerns and hold authorities accountable. These measures didn't eliminate problems entirely, but they marked significant strides toward bridging gaps that had long divided communities. Colonel Lisa Harper, now a decorated general herself, continued to champion causes close to her heart. Her leadership within the military inspired a new generation of soldiers, particularly women and minorities, to pursue careers in defense and public service. Together with Thompson, she established the Harper-Thompson Fellowship, a program designed to support underrepresented individuals seeking leadership roles in traditionally exclusive fields. Recipients of the fellowship went on to make waves in politics, education, and advocacy, carrying forward the values instilled by their mentors. Harper's dedication earned her numerous awards, including a Presidential Medal of Freedom, though she humbly insisted the honor belonged to all those fighting for justice. The gas station where Thompson was arrested underwent several transformations over the years. Once a modest establishment on the outskirts of town, it eventually became a landmark visited by tourists eager to learn about the incident that ignited a national movement. A mural painted on its exterior depicted scenes of unity, diverse hands reaching out to one another, children playing together, and people standing side by side at protests. The plaque commemorating Thompson's arrest remained intact, polished, regularly by volunteers determined to preserve its message of hope and perseverance. Employees working there took pride in sharing the story with visitors, turning the site into a living monument of progress. Meanwhile, the story of Officer James Carter faded into obscurity, remembered primarily through documentaries and history books. After serving his sentence, Carter disappeared from public view, unable to reintegrate into society. Rumors circulated about his whereabouts. He was said to have moved to a remote area, living off odd jobs and avoiding attention, but few cared to confirm them. To many, his fate served as a cautionary tale about the consequences of unchecked bias and abuse of power. Yet some viewed his downfall as a symptom of larger systemic failures, urging future generations to focus on addressing root causes rather than vilifying individuals. The town itself evolved dramatically, reflecting the broader societal shifts taking place around it. New businesses opened, attracting entrepreneurs from diverse backgrounds. Schools expanded their curricula to include lessons on social justice, environmental sustainability, and global citizenship. Community centers hosted workshops, art exhibits, and cultural festivals celebrating the town's growing diversity. Residents embraced these changes, recognizing that inclusivity enriched their lives in ways they hadn't imagined before. Even longtime skeptics admitted that the town felt more vibrant and connected than ever. For younger generations, the events surrounding Thompson's arrest were part of their collective memory, passed down through stories told by parents and grandparents. Activists like Maya Johnson, whose organization Voices of Tomorrow had grown into a nationwide network, ensured that the lessons of the past weren't forgotten. Through campaigns, educational programs, and partnerships with grassroots movements, Johnson and her peers kept pushing for reforms in areas ranging from criminal justice to healthcare access. Their efforts demonstrated that while progress required time and effort, the rewards were worth it. As the years rolled on, anniversaries of the arrest brought renewed reflection. Each milestone prompted discussions about how far the town and the country had come, as well as reminders of the work still needed to achieve true equality. Vigils held at the gas station drew crowds of all ages, united by a shared commitment to justice. Speeches delivered during these gatherings often echoed Thompson's words. We must never stop striving for a world where everyone is treated with dignity and respect. By the time General Thompson reached his 80th birthday, he had become a living legend, a symbol of resilience, integrity, and unwavering determination. Friends and admirers organized a celebration in his honor, transforming the park where he played baseball as a child into a festival of gratitude and inspiration. Hundreds attended, including former colleagues, activists, and ordinary citizens whose lives he had touched. As he stood at the podium, frail but radiant, Thompson offered a final piece of advice. Don't wait for someone else to lead the way. Be the change you wish to see. And remember, no act of kindness or courage is too small. His words resonated deeply, echoing long after the festivities ended. For those present, it was a reminder that the fight for justice wasn't confined to grand moments or historic figures. It happened every day in countless ways, through the choices people made to stand up for what was right. In the end, the story of General Marcus Thompson and Officer James Carter wasn't just about two men. It was about humanity's capacity for growth, redemption, and transformation. It proved that even in the face of adversity, hope could prevail. That accountability, though painful, was essential for healing. And that unity, forged through empathy and understanding, could overcome even the deepest divides. As the sun set over the town, casting golden hues across streets lined with trees and brick buildings, the scars of the past lingered quietly beneath the surface. But so did the memories of triumph, the moments when ordinary people rose above fear and hatred to create something extraordinary. And in that balance, the promise of a brighter future shone brightly, carried forward by those who refused to let the lessons of yesterday fade away.